You, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Minister of Labor. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And let me start off by saying my preference would have been that I come to this National Assembly and speak on the programs and plans for the future for the re-established Ministry of Labor that was promised by the People's Progressive Party. But before I get there, I would like to deal with some utterances coming from the member that spoke before me. Firstly, he said, in which I agree, that all of us must work to ensure that Guyana becomes a better place. But the question is, man is not judged by what they say, they are judged by what they do. And 2 Saturdays ago, one King David and Lil Joe, who wants to be a warlord, they went up to a certain place. And after they spoke, mayhem took over this country. And so the judgment, Honorable Member Trotman, is not on what you say. It is what the people over there, they do. And my honorable friend, opposition leader Joseph Armand, I would say this to you. You're at a place that you have to determine whether you want to be a creditable constitutional office holder or whether you want to be a warlord. You have to make that choice very shortly. And let me further say to you, for all the people who believe they're warlords, they still have several cells next to Charles Taylor at the Hague. And on that matter, I'll say nothing more. Mr. Speaker, the member in passing mentioned about the elections that has passed. What is the story about the elections? You all tried to thief a government. That is the story, as simple as that. And you took this country through agony and pain that they will never forget you for. 5 months. You knew you lost. March the 3rd, the night at Congress Place, you knew you lost. Your question and your problem was, how do you say to your supporters that you lost? But you knew you lost. Yes, I'm getting to the budget speech. I have to deal with Trotman Tribe first. I have to deal with Trotman Tribe first. Mr. Speaker, the reality, yes, it's an election debate because Trotman started it. And let me say this for the gentleman who's here clamoring over there. I can assure you none of the young people on this side of the house, they have any barber chairs in their house. I can assure you that. Mr. Speaker, the facts are, and you need to be reminded, the elections of March 2nd, 2020, the results were People's Progressive Party Civic, 233,336 votes, up to AFC, 217,821 votes. We are on this side because we won the elections by 15,460. Mr. Speaker, what is sad is that what we saw today is how far the coalition has fallen from grace. The fact that the Honorable Member Trotman has to come into this National Assembly to speak on financial and economic issues, it informs us how far the coalition has fallen from grace. Secondly, Honorable Mr. Trotman indicated and he quoted Winston Jordan. The fact is that if you had that confidence in Jordan, he would be sitting somewhere in one of those benches. Mr. Speaker, as regards many of the issues mentioned, my colleagues, they will speak to those matters, I am sure, the next couple of days. Mr. Speaker, Labour over the period of 5 years, 4 ministers shepherded that ministry under the coalition government. 4. Amna Ali, Paula Lawrence, Simona Brooms, and Keith Scott. You would note none of them is sitting over there. And what did they do with it? What did they do? Excellent, somebody said over there. Fool's paradise. The fact is, today, every department under the stewardship of this coalition, we have senior officers not appointed, vacancies. Labor, the chief labor officer, he is the deputy and the 2 assistants. OSH, they had to bring back a retired public servant because there was no one to be appointed. No deputy, and I could go on and on. I am told, Mr. Speaker, that the gentleman who just left the ministry, one Keith Scott, who incidentally didn't even qualify to be in the National Assembly. The fact is, I am told that he got a lot of visitors at the ministry there, at the department, because he had the best liquor bar of all the ministers in the coalition government. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Labour is to be re-established as indicated, and whilst I stand on my feet, I like to congratulate all of the persons who worked on the budget, and this budget is a people's budget with benefits for all the people. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Labour, re-established, will be built, and it will stand on 3 pillars. 1, capacity building. 2, human development. And 3, the protection of the rights of workers. Mr. Speaker, if someone don't understand what human development means, you shouldn't be in here. Mr. Speaker, capacity building, we would set out to train and retrain workers, and we have already put in place activities to do that. Mr. Speaker, human development, in that context, we believe that workers' welfare should be looked after, the issue of housing, the issue of proper health care, the issue of education and access to education for themselves and their children. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the members would agree with me that going forward, those things we need to do. Mr. Speaker, the course of action that we have taken is also to ensure that labor officers, occupational health and safety officers, we have already put in train for them to do foreign languages because we believe for them to do their work properly with the influx of Portuguese-speaking, Spanish-speaking, and even Chinese-speaking persons in this country. For them to engage them properly, they would have to know foreign languages. Mr. Speaker, presently, there is no administration. So we have to create a human resources department, an accounts department, an information technology department, a registry, a public relations department, and procurement. So yes, it's a new ministry because you didn't have one. I said when I started, re-establishing the Ministry of Labor. Mr. Speaker, for 2020, the Occupational Safety Department will continue to implement our programs of activities in keeping with the objective, which is to improve workers' conditions and environment in Guyana and to emphasize on preventative rather than curative measures. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, we will ensure that our intention is that in every region, we must at least have 2 occupation health and safety officers, every region outside of Georgetown. Presently, they don't exist. And therefore, employers, whether in mining, forestry, or whichever area, cannot be properly monitored. Mr. Speaker, workplace inspection is unheard of and was unheard of under this government in the true sense of the word. Mr. Speaker, because presently the Labor Department ministry / ministry that we are establishing, they are the department. The complement of staff should be 147. Today, as I speak to you, there are only 87 of that 147. So that is the condition and how they run labor. And that is the reason why they could not have done anything tangible for the workers. So you could not have proper workplace inspections. You could not have proper investigations of accidents because you don't have the employees, you don't have the necessary employees to carry out the functions. Mr. Speaker, the Joint Workplace Safety and Health Committee regulation has been approved by Cabinet and is expected to be brought into force. They approved it, yet it languished. We have to bring it into force. Mr. Speaker, we plan to organize and conduct training seminars and awareness sessions on occupational health and safety. The pandemic, COVID-19, it means that is another set of activities that OSH officers will have to monitor. And therefore, we have already engaged the Ministry of Health to give us the necessary guidance in this regard. Mr. Speaker, we also propose, as I said, to do staff development. That was unheard of under the last 4 coalition ministers who serve labor. Mr. Speaker, in addition, the department has already developed a basic guide for employers in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. A brochure also developed to provide information and guidance for workers. Those are the things that we plan to do as regards the new pandemic. Mr. Speaker, the program outlined is between October and December, and the department will continue to build on these achievements by doing the following things. We have to fill the existing vacancies, as I have said, at the OSH department. Presently, the senior staff, the deputy and assistant, is not there, does not exist. And therefore, the director has to be 4 persons in one. That we plan to change with some recommendations that we have already put forward. Mr. Speaker, we need to, and we have planned to encourage all workplace parties in all sectors of the economy to implement and maintain COVID-19 protocols for the safety and health of their employees. We have to encourage and establish or resuscitate the joint workplace safety and health committees. Mr. Speaker, we have to train members of the workplace safety and health committees. We have to create awareness for development and advertising of safety. And, of course, conduct inspections. Mr. Speaker, the Board of Industrial Training, the coalition government took the Board of Industrial Training from what it used to be, and in 2015, it trained less young people because the resources was not made available. Many of the necessary programs, they did not continue it in communities. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the objective of BIT, we will expand the program. We will expand the program. We plan, Mr. Speaker, presently, the BIT is constructed under a shocking regulation that I did not believe existed in 2020, where the regulation set out for them to only train young boys. That we will change so that young girls can be trained, so that single mothers can be trained, so that retirees can be trained. Persons who have retired at 55 need to be retrained to come back into the work environment. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, it shows how far removed from reality the people over there are. Countries recognizing the loss of skill have amended the age of retirement from 55 to 60 and to 64. And therefore, to capture skill, we have to retrain to bring people back into the workforce. And so we will ensure that such programs happen. Mr. Speaker, further, the Bank of Guyana annual report posited that the services sector during the period 2010 to 2018 contributed 52% to Guyana gross domestic product. Thus, BIT must be a resource to continue training in the industrial sector as well as the service sector. Mr. Speaker, our training programs will focus on beneficiaries acquiring knowledge and skills for the world of work, thereby increasing their opportunities for productive work, sustainable livelihood, personal empowerment, and socio-economic development. Mr. Speaker, during the 2020 calendar year, we strengthen our efforts to foster stakeholders' awareness and involvement in the National Apprenticeship Scheme. We will continue to implement the National Training Project for Youth Empowerment. Mr. Speaker, the oil and gas industry. We recognize that also the Board of Industrial Training must implement introductory training courses in oil and gas operations to facilitate sustainable employability. Mr. Speaker, we have already engaged the American Chamber. We have already engaged Exxon. We have already engaged Tullow. We have already had conversations with the ILO, who will help us to do the necessary training so that our occupational health and safety officers and our labor officers can be able also to regulate and supervise the space in the Atlantic. Presently, they are land-based. My friends over there, they had 5 years, and they never sought in an oil economy. It was important to train OSH officers and labor officers in understanding that new economy. That is how much they care about labor and its output. Mr. Speaker, we plan to implement blended learning approach to facilitate consistent skill-based learning for the effective and efficient skilling of youth following the COVID pandemic. We are already putting train, whereby training programs can be done virtually because of the pandemic that is with us. Mr. Speaker, the Board of Industrial Training going forward will not just be a department or an agency that train people just in the scale of sewing, that train people just in the scale of decorations and manicure and pedicure. We have already put in place the systems to ensure we can train fiber optic installers, software developers, and web developers, computer repairs technicians, information technology and data management specialists, network and design and network analysts, AutoCAD graphic design, general office administration. Mr. Speaker, so these are new programs that we will implement to ensure that the new economies and the new industries that are coming, our people are trained appropriately so they can participate in those programs. Mr. Speaker, our training outlook, Mr. Speaker, will focus on quality jobs, related skills training that is founded on industry needs and instituted to develop self-employment, awareness and engagement of the program's beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, therefore all our training engagements will systematically attempt to produce productive and innovative labor force constituents with involvement in new and emerging industries as well as traditional engineering industries. Mr. Speaker, in this regard, we have already had conversations with the Critchlow Labour College, the Kurukuru Cooperative College, to see how best we can collaborate to have these industrial training programs be done. And going forward, we plan to collaborate with all such entities that are involved in industrial training programs. Mr. Speaker, the department, the co-ops, and friendly societies, again, the issue of staffing, the director, his deputy, and assistant director. So we plan to ensure that the vacancies are filled. We plan to recruit and train to fill vacancies in regional offices, as I have said before. The Labor Department, the Occupation Health and Safety Department, and the Co-ops Department. We would ensure that every region, they have these officers working. And I've already indicated that the officers of these regions must be resident of the regions. Like has happened in education, like has happened in health, where we train people and send them back into their region to work. No coastlander, as they say, will be trained to go to 1, 7, 8, and 9. We will find young men and women who we will train and ensure they go back into their regions to work. Mr. Speaker, we plan to ensure officers conduct inspections of societies, including credit unions, in their respective regions to ascertain status of being compliant with rules and regulations. Mr. Speaker, I had meetings with co-op societies, and I was shocked at the asset base of many of these societies. And therefore, the question that I put to the credit union management and the co-op societies and friendly societies management, why would you have all this money there languishing in a bank that in the case of Republic Bank or whichever bank, they're making money on all these billions, and you are not seeking to invest it in the members of these societies? And therefore, an important conversation to continue with credit unions and co-op societies is to ensure that the millions and billions they have are utilized on the members, to ensure that they're housed properly. It is not fair to the members, I believe, that you have all of this money, and it is not going to beneficial use. So in a continued conversation with the credit unions, co-op societies, and friendly societies, we would seek to see how best they can optimize the money they have to be utilized on the workers who should be the beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, we have conducted meetings with the related agencies, as I have said. Mr. Speaker, the administration of the department will continue to meet with stakeholders in the interest of societies and for further growth and development areas of agriculture, logging, and housing, as I have said earlier. Mr. Speaker, because of the AML CFT legislation, we have to graduate upwards friendly societies to co-op societies. And that is a conversation we are presently having with friendly societies. Because the act was passed in 2009, and 11 years after, we still have dozens of friendly societies who need to be upgraded. So we will work with them to ensure that you had 5 years and you did nothing. You had 5 years and did nothing, that's why you're in the benches there, man. Mr. Speaker, under the new Labour Ministry, visits will be done to meet members and prospective members of societies to inform them and to deal with compliance. Visits is also necessary to ascertain the work of the regional offices. Mr. Speaker, the Central Recruiting and Management Agency, we have already established a Facebook page, what we call a job board. Our intention is to ensure that employers and potential employees, they can relate, and therefore many of the vacancies can be filled in the private sector and also the public sector. We believe that there should be a link between the employers and the employees, and the CRA may just play a minimal role of ensuring that link happens. Mr. Speaker, we plan to put in place a program to register unemployed persons seeking employment. As I said, to maintain a record of unnotified vacancy, mainly in the public and private sector, and through our job board to match job seekers with vacancies and arrange interviews for job seekers, to provide advice and career guidance and counseling for those seeking employment. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
Honorable member, someone move for an extension.
Mr. Speaker, I ask that the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
5 minutes to conclude. Honorable
thank you very
member,
much.
Minister Labour, please continue.
I'm very much aware of my time, and so I was passing some pages. Mr. Speaker, legislation that is languishing, that in 5 years, the 4 ministers, they did nothing to ensure that they were passed. Mr. Speaker, the Labour Act, a lot of subsidiary legislation to operationalize acts that are already passed. Mr. Speaker, the Termination of Employment and Severance Pay Act to be amended, Leave with Pay Act, payment of overtime, the issue of record keeping and the minimum wage order. Mr. Speaker, presently, I'm in conversation with the tripartite committee under the coalition government. Since last year, March, they have failed to conclude that discussion regarding the raise of the minimum wage for private sector employers. Since last year, March, not another meeting was held, and so much they care about workers. One meeting in March, and today, in September. Now we are discussing this matter to bring to finalization. Mr. Speaker, In conclusion, as we seek to reestablish and strengthen the above mentioned departments under the tenets, as I said, of capacity building, human development, and the protection of workers' rights, we will also engage in new initiatives with the creation of our new departments. Mr. Speaker, we are pleased that in the 4 months, the budgetary allocations we sought from the Ministry of Finance, they were because I suspect there's a recognition of the work that this new ministry we have to do that was not done by the people in the opposition benches. I can assure you, honorable members, that by June of 2021, the Guyanese people will see a labor ministry that they desire. Thank you very much.